I'm Jim Powell. I'm 95 years old. Um, I was in service for 3 years, 5 months, and 10 days in the Navy. 1942. Um, yeah, 1942. 42 to 46.
And how old were you when you went in?
18 years old.
So,
The Army was coming after me, but I didn't want to go into the Army, so I had to go down to Fort Wayne, and I got in the Navy down there, and I didn't have to have any problem with the Army then. Oh, first they put us in on an island, and they had a bunch of us there, and they had a carrier that they wanted to fill, and that was the Yorktown. The original Yorktown, the Japs had just beat it up, and it was laying dead in the water, nobody aboard, and we were afraid that they would come and get it, so we bombed it and torpedoed it and sunk it, and in the meantime they'd been building another carrier, and it was bigger than the one that we sunk. So we called it the Yorktown, and it was a wee bit bigger, held more planes, and was faster. So I went aboard that in Norfolk, Virginia. You know, when we get aboard a carrier, we don't know what jobs are. So they would have me fix, when a plane come in that was shot up, any part that moves on an airplane is fabric. It's covered with fabric. The rest of the plane is covered with metal. And so when they, when they picked it, they just picked so many for here, and they put me in where I was going to be a repairman. And they used to call me Mrs. Powell, your airplane is here, and I'd have to sew up that tail, and then I would shellac it or something to make it tight. And I remember one time they were turning that plane up, and I was there shellacking it, and it blew me right off the plane, and so it took off, and it went. And from there on, I did prop governors. I never knew, but they just taught me as we were out at sea. And I would change prop governors when a plane came in that was bad. And then there was a couple other things I did. I can't remember exactly, but they were small things because I wasn't the original Navy man that fixed airplanes, but I just did what they told me, and I put on the prop governors. I knew how to put them on, how to test them, and a couple other things, fabric being sewed up, and things like that. Spark plugs, we had to reuse spark plugs. We had, let's see, what did we have? A 30, 60, 90-day check on those planes. That's what they call it. And the spark plugs, we took them out, we'd clean them, and sometimes we'd have to bend them a little bit to get them right, and we put them back on again because we didn't have that many that we could put new ones on every time. And when we run out of new ones, that's what we had to do is just clear the spark plug and put them back in. I think I was on the flight deck, and if when you're in action, you can't be on the flight deck. But I was up on the flight deck, and there was no action. But all of a sudden, a plane came in from the port side. That's the left side of the ship. And he was coming at us. It was a Jap. And for some reason, our guns and the other guns, they usually put us between two cruisers or two battleships. And that plane came right over the battleship. And for some unknown reason, they didn't shoot him down. And he come towards our plane, our ship. And we had a boatswain mate back there on the port side, way aft, and he had 40 millimeter guns, and he shot that thing coming in and blew one of his wings off. I think it was, coming in, he blew the port wing off, and the right one took him in, and he dunked into the water and blew up and sunk. We had to go someplace to fix some planes that were down in some little burg, I guess, and we had to go repair something or replace something or do something to it. So they put us on a plane, and I thought, oh, gee, this is going to be nice, you know. We took off from the flight deck, and we went over to that place, and that place didn't have a big place. We landed and grabbed the cable, just like the other one, and boy, it comes down and grabs that cable, and it stops you, because you're coming in, what, 65, 70 mile an hour? I don't know how fast exactly, but that really stops you in a hurry. Then after we got it fixed, I said, this carrier's too small. You can't take off from it. And the guy says, no, we're going to catapult you off. And I've never been catapulted. They had one spot in the aft end of the ship, and they put us up on there, and they had the prop. They had the pilot turning the prop over full blast, and they said, lean over now and hold on. And boy, you take from no speed laying to get you out, what, 30, 40 mile an hour? Boy, it is a little bit of a strain, because a pilot, he can lean back, where we didn't have anything to lean back on. We just had to hold and look forward. But we made it. The food on the ship, you know, when you have, what do we have, 1,100 guys, and you eat 3 meals a day, you got to have a heck of a lot of food. And it's got to be good food, too, because sometimes we'd be out maybe a little longer than we should have, and the food got a little scarce. And during a bombing attack or anything where the Japs are out looking for us, we don't go down and eat meals. They bring you a meal. Several guys go around handing out food, and that would be our meal. It wouldn't be as good as we ordinarily got, but at least it was something to fill you up, because you get pretty hungry out there. What did we eat for breakfast? sometimes if it was a place, a smaller place, and you got to know the cook, you'd get a couple of fried eggs sometimes. Other times they had just a big batch of like bread and dough and potatoes or so to feed you. It wasn't the choicest food, but at least it was filling. And they brought it when they brought it around. We made sure that we have. And one guy, he would take one, then he'd go hide and come out some other place and get another one, and then he'd come back and share some of his take with us because it wasn't too good or too plentiful. Because when you got a ship of 1,100 guys, that's a lot of carrying stuff around to feed everybody. But it worked out anyhow. Yeah, we had a lot of beans, and to this day, I love beans because we had so many, and beans, I guess, stick with you and are filling and are good for you. But these were just pork and beans. I don't know if I remember any meat in them. If it was, it'd be very little because we couldn't. The officers were topside. They probably got a little more meat than we did, but I guess they had to use their brains to get us in and out of the war. But otherwise, to this day, I still love beans, and I'll eat them wherever I am. Yeah, one time we pulled into an island. I forget what island it was, but no Japs were around there, and we had some other ships in there too. And we docked, and we had one side, they opened up, and they threw a cargo net over the side, and that's a big one. And the skipper come out and says, now everybody climbs down that to get into the water to swim. We don't want any jumping or diving in it. Well, I'm with a guy that's a good diver, and he says, come on, Jim, let's dive in. I don't know how high the hangar deck is off the water, but it must be 25 feet, maybe 30. But I never dove in my life that high up. I could do a jackknife, but when I dove off of there, I didn't know when, a jackknife, you come down, touch your toes, and then you come out of it, and I didn't know exactly when to come out of it because I never dove from that height, and it was kind of like a belly flop. Oh, did that hurt? And I was just treading a little water, and all of a sudden, I turned around and looked where our ship was. They had the ship just on the forward anchor, so therefore the ship will revolve. If they had anchors at both ends of the ship, it wouldn't have done that. Well, I'm out there playing around after my stomach got settled, and then I looked and I saw that ship that far away. I said, my gosh, I've got to swim back to that. Well, I started swimming, and I swam quite a ways, and I was getting tired. And finally, one of my buddies come up and says, what's the matter, Jim? And I says, gee, I can't make it anymore. I just treading water. So he says, I'll stick with you for a while. So he stuck with me for a while, and nobody come out to help us. And finally he says, hey, I'm getting tired. I'm going to have to go. So he left, and there's me treading water, and can't get ship. Well, they sent out a little whaleboat. That's almost like a rowboat, and they sent it out, and they picked up a few of us, and I was one of them that they picked up, and boy was I glad, because that was my closest thing that I thought I might drown, and I didn't want to drown. So I got back on, and here I am today. When we first got on the ship, you go on a shakedown cruise. Shakedown, that means you share and only do what you need to do, and you can see what you don't have to do. And this ship, we went on a shakedown cruise, and it was out in the Gulf of Mexico that we went on the shakedown cruise, and just a little off of South America, and all of a sudden the ship made dropped the port side and was turning. Here a Japanese got into the bay and torpedoed us, or sent a torpedo at us, and our captain was J.J. Clark, and boy, he was a rascal. He turned that ship. Let's see, what did I don't know if I'm saying these exact words or the exact stuff, but he said that ship turned with the bow at 30 degrees. We were banked over, and they said at 35 the ship rolls over. So, but the torpedo just missed us off the bow. Here'd be a brand new ship and it gets torpedoed. They didn't want that, and that's why they made that turn. But wow, all airplanes are tied down on the flight deck because they have waterways where the water will run down those drains and go over the side, and and tie an airplane down so that something would happen to them if we got into a high wind. They would be all anchored down so they wouldn't roll around and get hurt. When we were in Honolulu, let's see, I forget the the guy's name from Indianapolis. He's after me. He said, "Let's get a tattoo, Jim." And I says, "No, I don't want a tattoo." He said, "Oh, come on." So I said, "No." Well, I wasn't much of a drinker. I could drink one drink and it'd be all right. But his name is Dale Peterson. Dale, if you ever hear this, you can remember that. Dale Peterson's got the same tattoo as I have. He got me half crocked, and he could drink, but I couldn't. And he got me into, and the tattoo artist was Coleman, the world's greatest tattoo artist. Back in those days, he was advertised very highly because he could tattoo better than anybody. And even my tattoo today, the color is still there, and it's kind of thick yet. Where tattoos today, the skin is real thin, or, real straight. Not like ours. And my tattoo only, I think, cost $2.50. $2.50. And now the same thing, I get it, it probably cost $30, $40, $50. Some of the tattoos those guys have, they pay upwards into the hundreds of dollars to get a tattoo. And they hurt back in my days because they take that needle and I think it's got 5 little needles in there with the color, and they can color that tattoo. It was several calls, and then it had a USN. You can't read that now, and the color's all gone but the blue. But it was real inexpensive, where today they're very expensive. You could have a tattoo on the ship, but if we were in Honolulu and you got a tattoo and you come aboard and the ship takes off and you get sick from a tattoo, sometimes you do get, and if you went to sick bay, you got court-martialed because you are taking the Navy's time instead of your own getting that tattoo, and nothing wrong with it, but it was a couple of them had that. But when I got mine, the trouble with it is you wear a T-shirt a lot because it's so hot, and as the guys go by, they take their fist and hit you up there. Hey boy, how you doing? And they would hit that, and they'd break those scabs open, and they'd bleed again. And finally I got it healed up, and now it's kind of, you can feel it, but it's mostly been good for years. I got well over 100 degrees. I remember what they said, but I forgot what it was. But it was hot. We got, I think it's called Infantago. You get it where different crazy places from the heat. Infantago, yeah, I'm sure that's first time I heard that name for a long time. But that's I'm sure that's where they get the heat, and the index would be way up there, well over 100 degrees, and then airplane engines turning up. They're kind of hot too. And if you're on the flight deck, I didn't have to be on the flight deck too often. Sometimes I'd have to get the pilot into the cockpit, and then we would put on his safety belt and his shoulder harness and get him all fixed up so that we can get off the wing then, and we'd stay on the wing stub, which is the closest to the fuselage, and we'd get off, and then they'd start it up. Otherwise, it'd blow you right off the airplane, and there's another airplane behind you turning up. We had one guy hit by a prop, and I never got to see him. The skipper just said and told us about that. Knock that stuff off about when those planes are turning up, don't step in the front of them. But this one guy went around the back, but it blew him into the next plane, and he threw his arm up, and that prop just cut it right down. Didn't cut his arm off, but I guess he had how many hundreds of stitches to stitch all that up. And then when we went to see him in the sick bay, they had his hand tied up, I guess for the blood, what had happened to him. And there's nothing worse than walking into a prop when it's turning. Whew.